I'm Amy Harkey, and this week for the discussion board, we will be talking about mandated reporting. Mandated reporter is a term that we hear over and over. And so before I get into my article that I researched, I wanted to give you just a little bit of background about what it exactly is to be a mandated reporter, who that entails, and what it kind of means. So in Missouri, if you have reasonable cause to believe that a child is being abused or neglected, you must report it to the Department of Children's Services or to a law enforcement agency. So then who is the mandated reporter? Physicians, nurses, social workers, daycare staff, teachers, ministers, law enforcement officials, or any other person who's responsible for caring for a child. There's also a penalty if you know about abuse and you fail to report it. Failure to report is a Class A misdemeanor, which brings up to a year of jail and a fine of $2,500. The majority of reporters are actually in the school system. Teachers, paraprofessionals, aides, and other school staff are often on the front lines of reporting that suspected abuse. These high rates of reporting indicate that educators are in the prime location for recognizing and reported that abuse. It also requires that they're properly trained on how to be aware of the signs of abuse and neglect. But what happens after we report abuse? And how does reported abuse have an impact on the child's learning and their cognitive development? The article that I found, a partnership-directed school-based intervention for child physical abuse and neglect beyond mandatory reporting, took a look at just those questions. First off, they needed to look at and figure out what was the top risk factor for those who are most vulnerable to the trauma resulting from physical abuse and neglect. And what they found was low-income preschool children living in high-risk urban areas were those at most risk. In order for children to successfully develop, we all know that kids have to progress through each stage of development and across multiple domains. Each stage brings with it its own sets of challenges, and that child must overcome and adapt to that in order to go to the next stage. The most influential impact on a child's progression through those stages are found in the child's microsystem. Those who are in closest proximity to the child, which are typically parents, but they can also be siblings, they can be grandparents, they can be other adults or children living in the home, as well as those who are at school. So think of a child's microsystem like those who the child spends the most time with. And those are the systems that play the critical role in the effects of maltreatment of the child. We also know that evidence shows that a child who has been abused or neglected is often hindered in their socio-emotional development. One indication is found in social play among their peers. In order for a preschooler to successfully develop those social skills, he or she must be able to interact and play with their peers. But what we see in children who have been abused is that inability to interact with their peers. Studies show that those who have been abused initiate fewer interactions with their peers than non-maltreated children. This results in poor socialization, and as the child enters school and actually follows them throughout their school years. So how do we create an intervention program that would benefit both the child and their abuser? And that's the area that this article looked at. It took over 4 years of research between parents and educators. And what they did is they developed a 3-step process that characterized the partnership, directed, and school-based approach. Because children are not required to attend school until around the age of 5, and that varies from state to state, this puts children who are most at risk out of the public eye and in need of early intervention. So Head Start programs were started. The Head Start program provided that easy access for educators to get into the homes of preschool children provided the necessary resources and materials to ready children for kindergarten. And by using this strategy, approximately 73% of identified families who were at risk were reached with the Head Start program. Head Start created a bridge between the Child Protective Services and the school and allowed school access into the homes of children who are most vulnerable and provided intervention at an earlier age. That was the first step of their intervention. The second step, the study created COPE, which was community outreach through parent empowerment. This provided a school-based component in how to approach child maltreatment. COPE's goal was to get vulnerable parents involved socially with Head Start. We all know from having children in our own classroom that children whose parents are actively involved with their child's life and with their child's education, the child actually is more successful in the classroom, more successful socially, and outside of the classroom. And so by providing COPE, it provided parents that opportunity to be involved with their child's education and their academic growth. It also provided parents with a model for being around other parents. They saw parents modeling nurturing, responding behaviors in a positive way. Many children who are at most risk for abuse or neglect live in families who actually associate with other dysfunctional families with similar behavior. And what this program did was provide and develop a stable community setting that offered that constant daily contact with other parents that these vulnerable parents need. Research from the study showed that schools need to recognize the harmful effects of social isolation on parents and the need for that social support. Schools can help parents become involved in their child's education and provide parents with those opportunities to enhance their own coping strategies, which in turn improves their child's social and academic growth. So lastly, what this research did was looked at an intervention that would help draw in children who were maltreated. Play Buddy intervention was created, and this strategy looked at using peer play as a context for enhancing social competency of preschool children who were abused or neglected. And a lot of planning had to go into exactly how to institute the Play Buddy intervention in like a natural free play environment with the goal to increase the level of interactive play between the socially withdrawn, maltreated, and the non-maltreated children within the Head Start program. We all know that children who have been abused or neglected often withdraw and don't have a lot of interactions with their peers. So with this Play Buddy intervention, a parent volunteer was actually trained to implement play sessions in the classroom and then to support the children as they played and interacted. A play buddy was used to draw in the play partner, which was identified as the maltreated child, into active play. The parent volunteer then encouraged and praised any engagement that they observed between all the kids. The success of the Play Buddy intervention showed that lab-tested interventions for maltreated children can adapt and work well within the school classroom, and teachers who teach in high-risk areas should be trained in that intervention. So now how can we take this information and use it in our classrooms, even when we don't teach preschool children? How do we go beyond identifying a child that we suspect is being abused or neglected and then provide for their needs long after the report has been made? Those are the questions that this article chose to tackle. The research showed that we first, remember, needed a way into their homes. Secondly, we needed a way to create a network that would bring social support to parents who are at risk and their kids that would model the type of parenting skills necessary. Lastly, we needed to see how to engage a withdrawn, maltreated student toward peer play. And I truly believe that one way that we can stop the cycle of abuse has to be done by reaching one family at a time. And this study shows exactly how to do that, how to influence families by modeling that positive behavior. So the questions that I wanted to discuss with you on this week's discussion board are as follows. Number 1, in your current position, would you feel comfortable making a call to report suspected abuse or neglect? 2, do you currently see any of these 3 interventions mentioned earlier in place in the district where you teach, or maybe in a school district that you live near to? And lastly, how could you implement any of these interventions in your classroom with your own students? Thank you for watching. I look forward to hearing all of your thoughts on the discussion board this week.